Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got Brad Medford on the podcast. He is the co-founder and CEO of Imperium Technologies. Imperium Technologies is a startup manufacturing company that is manufacturing a new age steam trap for the steam distribution companies and manufacturing companies that utilize steam for heat. Their steam trap is kind of disrupting an old archaic industry that hasn't had any kind of advancements in steam trap manufacturing for at least 20 or 30 years. And so their steam trap reduces greenhouse gas emission while also helping these companies save on fuel. So we dig into his journey starting this business with his co-founder, kind of the differences and complexities of starting a physical product business startup versus just starting a more technology SaaS type business. And so it's a very interesting concept. He lives here in Austin, Texas. So we talk about, building and starting a manufacturing plant here in Austin. So very fascinating and interesting episode. So let's get Brad on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Brad, thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Hey, glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's kind of jump in, give the audience a little bit of an update or kind of an intro to you. So maybe share like where you are, what you're doing, and kind of the role that you play in the business that you're running.
Yeah. Again, my name is Brad Medford. I'm CEO of Imperium Technologies. We are operating in an industry that most people don't know much about. But surprisingly, this industry consumes 37% of all the fossil fuels out there. It's industrial steam. And the first question that people ask is 37%, that seems very high. And every time I say that, I immediately see people's phones pop up and I see them Google it and they immediately go, oh my gosh, you're right. But what's even more surprising is that 37% of that fuel is lost. And it's being lost because of these devices that don't work very well. And so we have actually come up with a solution on that. And why this is so important is that in the manufacturing space, anywhere that they need heat, so this could be paper manufacturing, this could be pharmaceuticals, food production, wood manufacturing, anything that requires large amounts of heat, they're probably using steam. And so when you're losing 20% of that energy, that's a huge loss. Imagine for a minute if you had a hole in your gas tank and every time you filled it up, you lost 20% of that through that hole. Well, that's exactly what's going on in the steam industry today. And the fact that 37% of all fossil fuels are being used to produce steam, it's amazing to me. And so it's something that my business partner and I, we looked at and we said, boy, we can solve this. So that's what we're doing today.
So yeah, well, let's kind of. I always like to hear people's origin stories of how they start businesses, whether they're a B2B SaaS business or a product or anything like that. So how did you and your co-founder kind of get to the point where you were like, hey, let's start this business, and then kind of how did that kind of first domino fall to kind of actually starting it?
Yeah, so my business partner Gordon Judd had been in the steam industry for a very long time. He worked for a large steam utility in a major metropolitan area, and they sold steam to buildings in the downtown metro area, and they sold steam the same way they sell electricity. People would say, hey, we need heat, we need some sort of heating source for this building, and they would buy heat, and so they'd buy it the same way. He and I went to grad school together, and we'd stayed friends over the years, and he had called me up one day and said, Brad, there's a real problem in the industry. We got to find a way to fix this. So with his steam background in mechanical engineering, very smart, a lot of experience in that space, he knew that I had spent my career in the electronics industry. And he said, Brad, there has to be a way to do this. And I said, well, hasn't somebody come up with a solution to this? Because this sounds like an area that's ripe for an electronic solution to come into. And he said, Brad, there isn't. And I said, you're kidding me. No one, he said, yeah, every solution out there is purely mechanical. It is unmonitored. And believe it or not, the way they inspect these things is they literally go around with stethoscopes. and heat imaging devices. And they have to go to each one, and they have to put the stethoscope on it and listen to make sure this valve is opening and closing. They'll then sometimes use a heat gun to actually look at it and see, hey, is this thing working properly? This is supposed to be done maybe once a quarter, but in reality, it's probably done much less than that. And it's very expensive, and you can have hundreds, if not thousands, of these traps in an industry. So when you're talking about sending people around doing that type of very manual work, it gets very expensive, just the inspection of them. And also, you don't know. And when these things fail, you're going to have either water building up in your pipes, or you're going to have these things fail open and you're wasting the energy. So that's where you get that 20% loss. So either way, if they fail open, you're losing the energy. If they fail shut, you get water building up and you start damaging infrastructure equipment. So as he was telling me about this problem, we tried a couple of different things. We tried a couple of different prototypes real quickly. We finally landed on something that worked. And with that, we went over and talked to a friend of the family, Rob Neville of Springbok Ventures. He's done multiple startups throughout the industry. And I said, hey, Rob, do we have something here? And we gave him the pitch, and our pitch check, such as it was at the time. And he was very kind. Looking back at that deck, I still have it. He said, yeah, you guys got something here. You got a lot of work to do on the pitch deck. But he said, I'm starting a venture fund. I'd like to support you guys. And so we started and took off, and here we are today. We're actually shipping products. So it's been an adventure. It's been a lot of fun. And I think what's been the most satisfying is in speaking to people in the industry and speaking to those people who are living with this inherent problem that's been around for more than 40, 50, 60 years or more. They are saying, hey, this is a game changer. This is a huge impact. So the journey really has been one of, I can't believe they still do it this way, to, boy, not only have we solved this problem, we've solved a whole lot of other problems as well.
So for obviously we're recording this in video and audio. So for people that maybe aren't familiar with your company or the product that it produces, I guess maybe at a high level, explain what, how these valves work, what they're actually used for in these manufacturing systems, and then maybe how your solution is different, better, just so we can kind of get a better understanding of exactly what Imperium kind of is solving and what their solution is essentially. Yeah.
So you have these large boilers that produce this steam, and it comes out at very high pressure, typically 150 psi, and it's going to go over a distribution system of pipes. And these pipes can be thousands of feet, sometimes 5-10 miles or longer. As that steam is moving around, some of that steam is going to turn back into water. Well, you have to get that water, or condensate, the technical term for it, you have to get that out of the pipes. And the only thing a steam trap does is it opens when these things fill up with water, and then it closes, trapping the steam inside. That's its only job. The problem is it doesn't do a terribly good job because it's purely mechanical. In reality, there's about 24 different types out there in the industry today. And why are there 24 different types? Well, it's because none of them work perfectly well in every situation. So it's a bit of an art and a science of what they do. So they put these steam traps in the distribution system at these various points, and they hope that they are removing the water that's building up in the pipe, and they hope that they aren't releasing the steam that they have produced. We came up with an electronic way of doing it. In fact, it's the first electronic steam trap in the market. Nobody else has done this. We have the patents on it. And so fundamentally, what we're doing is we are now able to remove that water from the steam pipes in a reliable fashion. What's been very surprising is not only have we solved that problem, removing the water reliably and not wasting the energy, but we're also finding out other problems as well. We're finding out problems about their other equipment problems of the boilers, design problems, operational problems. So we have really solved the first problem, the reliable trap. So problem one solved, but problem two is a much larger problem, and that is the fact that these steam distribution systems today are largely unmonitored. People really don't know what's going on in a moment-to-moment basis. And when you think about the importance of this, if you're talking about semiconductor manufacturing or wood manufacturing or paper manufacturing, where you have these continuous processes, when this heat delivery system fails, the steam delivery system, they have to shut down the production line. That causes lots of downtime, lots of money, and lots of trouble trying to find exactly where the problem is. Because just because the system has failed, they then have to send people out trying to find out where that failure is taking place.
And so is your solution obviously a better or electric valve that kind of, I guess, opens and closes automatically or through your electronics, but then it's also monitoring, I guess, what is being released, so to make sure that it's actually releasing the water that it's supposed to, and not releasing the steam that it's not supposed to. And so it allows not a lot of manual input that is needed from inspectors and things that have to go out and actually listen to what you said earlier about listening to hear if these valves are working. But it allows that kind of maintenance crew to be reduced, so they don't have to go out on a regular basis. And so I guess as you think about, one of the things that when you're trying to solve a problem that impacts an industry that's been doing the same thing for generations, it seems like they're slow adapters to new technology. So, how have you kind of seen adoption rates, or I guess interest from these companies that would probably have to spend a significant amount of capital to replace the valves or kind of bring in your technology? From my understanding, I guess, or from my assumption, are you replacing the valve, or are you adding on to it to make it more efficient? And so, yeah, I'm just kind of curious about the adoption of from the kind of traditional players to shift from what they've been doing.
Yeah, well, the thing about these valves is that they are so pervasive in these systems. They are everywhere, and even in a small system, they have lots of these things. And these are actually not capital expenses, so they're replacing these things about every 2 to 4 years anyway. So a good way to think of this is these are like tires for trucks for UPS.
Yeah,
it's just an expense item that they're replacing. So what we're hearing from from the people in the industry who are very excited about this, what they're saying is, okay, we're just going to, instead of buying this older technology, we're going to buy the newer technology. We're going to buy IntelliTrap, because that's going to give us, it's not only going to solve the reliability problem that we have with the current technology, but it's also going to provide us lots of information that we never had before. One way to look at this is we are essentially providing them a miles per gallon meter in some ways to their system. We don't necessarily tell them exactly where the problem is. Well, because first of all, we'll know if there's a problem with the trap. They're going to know that right away. But if suddenly you see the amount of water you're removing going very high or going very low from what it typically is, it's going to raise questions. Why is that suddenly happening? If you're driving your car and suddenly you drop from 25 miles per gallon to 15 or 10 miles per gallon, maybe you wouldn't know where the problem is. But hey, there's a problem here. I need to get it looked at. Well, it's the same thing with what we're doing. Because of the way our steam trap, and yes, we are replacing the entire steam trap. So take out the old steam trap, these unreliable things that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years. And during your normal maintenance, as you're just replacing these devices that you have to replace anyway, put in a IntelliTrap. And what you're going to find is, boy, not only do we now have a reliable trap, but we're now getting information about the overall operation of our steam system that we never had before.
Yeah, I was curious about the data, I guess, that you're providing to them. To your point, if that trap is releasing more often, that probably means there's some deficiency upstream, right? And so, I guess what kind of data, and I guess insights are you providing back to the owner of this steam distribution system to, I guess, make their lives easier, better from a maintenance perspective? Because again, if you can tell a lot easier that there is some problem downstream or upstream, it makes their life easier, so they maybe don't have to shut down the entire plant or the entire production line to solve the problem. I guess, talk about the data, I guess, that you're providing back.
Yeah, well, let me just start where we ended there. One of the things that they found is that, boy, because of the data that we're getting, we're able to see problems weeks in advance, if not months in advance. And so, one person always said, and because of this, I saw a problem that would have created a huge issue in 2 or 3 weeks. I would have gotten a call at 7:30 in the morning and say, hey, this thing isn't working. Get somebody out of here. I'd have to call somebody, send them over. But now I was able to call them and say, hey, can you go out tomorrow and fix this problem? There's something going on out there. So the data that we are providing, that, by the way, nobody else is providing this, is the amount of water removal, like condensate. That's parameter number one. The second parameter is how often is that valve open? How long is it staying open? Because if you look at at that valve and it's staying open 100% of the time, it means that you're not getting all the water out. It means that whatever's going on upstream is creating so much condensate, so much water that the valve itself cannot remove that. So it was able to remove it for the last 3-4 months, but now suddenly it can't. Why not? What's going on? What's creating all that water? The other thing is that as you look at the amount of water that's being removed, it really tells you, hey, what is going on in my plant? Why is this taking so much water out of the system during these times of the day? Or sometimes it's even very informative when it stops taking out a lot of water. Well, why not? We actually found that there was a very significant design problem in the system because during certain times of the day, the water removal rate dropped almost to zero. Turned out that was a design problem, but they never would have known that. If they had gone out with their stethoscopes and heat guns, everything would have been fine. They would have checked it off and said, there's a great problem. But because we're getting this data, and you're seeing the data over time, we're reporting data every 15 minutes, as opposed to a 2 or 3 minute inspection that takes place a couple of times a year. Because you're getting real-time data every 15 minutes, you're getting data that you've never had before.
Are you guys leveraging any kind of AI in your systems to kind of make the data output more readable, efficient, so people just kind of like, hey, the AI is learning about these different systems, and then it can tee up some type of alert or, preventative maintenance schedule, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I don't know how, everybody's talking about AI. So I figured even though you're a physical product with some electronics, I figured we, could probably leverage it a little bit.
Yeah, well, we do have a monitoring system, and so there is what's a teletrap, which is the actual device that sits in the steam system. But then we have Steam View, which gives you the visibility to all the IntelliTraps in your system. So yes, we are looking at getting AI into that. Well, we're working with a college professor and a couple of other grad students on that exact problem. I'd like to make the difference between data and information. Data is just is what you get out of a device. Information is, okay, I now know what's going on, I'm going to do something. What's interesting in speaking to the people who are very deep in the AI is that there always has to be some sort of priming of the data. So you have to have some sort of data to put into it for the AI to be able to work. There is no data like this. No one has ever collected this type of data before. So we really don't have any data to feed into an AI system at this point. We're going to be collecting the data. We're going to be using the data. We're going to be working with this university to actually get AI built into it. And this has been one of the things that has really intrigued an awful lot of the people who we're working with, is they're saying, boy, I have never been on a project where there is no data. Just about every system they look out, there's some sort of history, there's some sort of data that they can start feeding into this thing. But they're saying we're starting at day zero on this.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you've got these IntelliTraps throughout the system. Now the Steam distribution operator can have more visibility into how their entire system is kind of working positively, negatively, any issues. So you're kind of almost creating a kind of monitoring system for their entire distribution model.
Right. So today there are things that we can spot. There are things that we look at and we say, boy, here's a problem that's coming up. This is what the data is telling us. But there's an awful lot of data that we know there's something in it. We just got to find a way to find it. And that's really where AI comes into it. Because they can start finding patterns, looking at other pieces of equipment, knowing what's going on with that, and make those correlations that, frankly, the human brain can't look at that much data and pull information out of. So, yeah, we are truly breaking new ground with this.
Awesome. Well, no, I felt we should spend a little bit of time kind of understanding the problem, understanding the solution, because, this is not just another B2B SaaS company, that are a little bit more cookie cutter. This is definitely a unique kind of 0 to 1 kind of model. So
it is.
So thank you for kind of walking an uninitiated person through kind of what the system looks like. I have a better picture of that. I guess to take it a little bit more broadly, I think the business you guys started a handful of years ago at this point, kind of officially, where are you in the journey? I think you mentioned earlier that you're starting to ship products. So obviously you've gone past that, kind of demo phase or kind of MVP phase. So maybe share a little bit about where you are in the journey of kind of the business.
Yeah, where we are right now is we are actually in our first production run. We are selling products to a lot of our trial customers. Because when they got it into their system, they were so impressed with it. In fact, when the trial was over and we said, okay, we're going to start a production run, they said, well, we want the first ones off the line because it's been that impactful to us. I was thinking, well, boy, who do I want to sell these things to? Who would be the biggest, the big name that we could sell it to? And these people who are part of our trials came back and said, man, we'll pay you 2.5 times the price. It's been that impactful to our business. We really want to get these things. So when you're a startup, you're looking for money, there's only one right answer to that. So we did that. So we are shipping product. We are right now trying to scale our manufacturing. It's going well, but as you can imagine, anytime you start assembling these things, there's a million little, every screw, every joint, every tube has to be accounted for, it has to be looked at. We're working through that. We have it, frankly, pretty close to where we wanted to be. We're finding some efficiencies that we didn't think we were going to find early on. But so far we're doing really well, and we're really happy with what progress we're making.
And is this, talking about manufacturing, talking about kind of assembly and products and all of that, we're recording this in kind of early May. So tariffs are obviously,
right.
All the buzz at the moment. So where are you manufacturing the product, and are you sourcing materials from, other countries? And so you've had to kind of battle through the tariff situation.
Yeah, this product is made in the U.S. It's made right here in Austin, Texas. And we are very proud of that. We did not want to ship this overseas. We want to, and it's really a quality issue. Our team is going to be watching these things. We're making sure we're shipping a quality product. We do obtain some parts from overseas, and yes, the tariffs have impacted us to a degree. But in some ways, the tariff issues and everything that has caused, it's really had our team go back and look at these things. So what can we do differently? How can we look at this? And what we've found is that there are certain things that we've been able to do that's really reduced the price. So yes, tariffs have impacted our costs, like it's impacted everybody. Mm-hmm. But we've also been able to drive down a lot of the price that we originally thought would be years away. But in reality, we've been able to get those moved out very quickly. There's still a whole lot of cost savings we can get to. We're shipping our first production run, and we've actually sold out of our second production run. We haven't even started that yet, but we're already sold out of that, and we're actually starting to eat into our third production run. So once we get those things out there and moving, we're going to start looking at some other significant cost reductions out there. So we're very confident that we can get our cost of product, our BOM cost down, and looking forward to seeing that happen.
Got it. So I guess I'm curious, has the tariff situation caused you to kind of ramp up or pull forward some of that kind of cost cutting measures or kind of, cost savings or strategies that you've looked at that maybe you're like, we'll look at that down the road. Maybe that'll be, production run 3, 4, whatever. Or has that kind of forced your hand a little bit to kind of look at more efficient ways to do things?
It has, because when you sit there and you look at, okay, well, this part of the process, it was going to cost us this much money. Okay, well, it's gone up by this much, and you add it all up, and you say, well, boy, if I had that money, instead of just paying it into a tariff, I could take that and I could improve the product. That makes a lot more sense from a overall strategy perspective. So, yeah, we don't like the tariffs, but when you have that money and you're looking at spending it, you're saying, well, boy, if I put it into tariffs, I'm never going to see that money again. But if I put that back into the product, I use that money to gain efficiencies, then that's a long-term win.
Yeah. And how are you selling this to customers? Obviously, it sounds like they almost pay for themselves over time, I would imagine. So there's probably some type of a, cost benefit analysis that you show to a customer. And I guess as you're answering that, how many of these traps are in I'll call it a standard steam distribution system? Obviously, they're small and large, but is it 5? Is it 500? Like what kind of, when you're going to a customer and saying, hey, as you're replacing, let's move these in, or how many are they buying over time?
Yeah, I would say the typical steam system will have anywhere from 100 to maybe thousands of it. Wow. It's probably lands somewhere in the 300-400 range. It depends on the size. It is very dependent on the size of the system. But, in some ways, the smaller systems represent smaller businesses who are much more concentrated on reducing cost. And the fact that we can reduce their fuel consumption by 20%, well, that's 20% fuel reduction. So that becomes real important to a lot of these people.
And I'm assuming your steam trap is more expensive than traditional just because there's some electronic component in it. And so, you would kind of want to show that cost reduction over time to say, hey, by saving 20% on your, fuel costs, then it's going to pay for itself over the long haul.
Well, the fuel is obviously a big part of it, but there's also the labor cost. There's the infrastructure damage, because when this water builds up in these systems, it causes huge amounts of damage. In fact, one of our trial customers was replacing a $1.1 million pipe underneath the streets of a major metropolitan area because condensate was building up. And when he completed the project, he had no idea where that condensate was coming from, because when he inspected his traps with the stethoscopes and the heat guns, they were all working, and they were. But the problem was there were design problems that they didn't know about, that they needed to be fixed. They were able to fix it. But to answer your question maybe more precisely, it's about a 12-month payback period.
Okay.
Most people say, in about 12 months I'm going to do it, because we start calculating in the labor cost. Because the type of people who go around inspecting these things, these are extremely well-trained people who are very knowledgeable of their business. I'm always amazed by what these things I can learn from talking to these people. Yeah. So there's that. And then there's the damage to the infrastructure. There is the downtime, and downtime becomes very critical. If you're talking about semiconductor manufacturing plant, if you're talking about somebody's continuous processing, if you have to shut down that production line for for a given period of time, it's going to be expensive to get it back online, and the lost revenue from product you should have been producing.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, I talk to a lot of people kind of, especially here in Austin, because we're actually live very close to one another, but, a lot of these people are starting tech startups and all that stuff. And so how has it been kind of starting, a physical product company, from the onset? Like, what kind of journey did you go through, or what maybe lessons do you wish you would have known about now, but back then that you learned kind of through the process? I'm just kind of curious how you think about that.
Well, I think the first thing I learned is don't do a startup in the middle of a pandemic. So hopefully that will not be an issue going forward. But I would also say that, early on, there was kind of this view that, physical products, we really want to do the SaaS model. We're all about software. It scales quickly, and I understand that. But I think what I have seen over time is that people are starting to realize that, the manufacturing base is very important, and we can do that. The other thing I would say too is that finding the right people to talk to is important. And some people are just maybe they're focusing on medical things, maybe they're focusing on financial tech, all these different things. But finding the right people to speak to has really been, I think, probably the key learning I've had, because you speak to the right people who understand it. That makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. How do you find those right people? Because I know, there's, especially here in Austin, there's a ton of access to startup ecosystems, kind of founder kind of factories and accelerators and all that stuff. But, I guess as somebody that maybe has an idea for a physical product, if they're listening to this, or even if it's a SaaS startup, doesn't matter. Like, how do you kind of identify the right people? Because obviously everybody's going to want to give you an opinion on, what they think about your business or your product. But how do you kind of suss out or try to find the people that are going to, kind of shorten the runway that you need to get to the point where you're going to be successful, right? Kind of shrink that kind of learning curve as much as possible.
Yeah, well, we're actually part of two groups here. The first one is Greentown Labs, and this is located down in Houston, Texas, a great group. They were very focused on the greenhouse gas reduction. The fact that we can reduce fuel consumption by 20%, well, that's a 20% reduction in your greenhouse gases. Out of your expense budget, I don't have no expense budget device that can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions by 20%. So that's an example. So you find those accelerators that are very much focused in your area. So that's one thing. We're also part of Capital Factory, and Capital Factory is very good in just finding people who are very interested in ways to improve the operation or some sort of business problem that's out there. From a operational business perspective, these traps are a huge issue, a cost issue for these companies out there. So by basically playing both sides of that fence, one side we're playing the greenhouse gas environmental side, and Greentown has been very helpful in that. The other side of it is really that financial thing. What is the business impact? What are we doing to help these business owners reduce their overall cost? Well, that's where Capital Factory has been real helpful.
Yeah, I used to have a hot desk at Capital Factory, so I worked out of there, once a week typically to get me out of the house and go see people in person when we first moved to Austin. Speaking of Austin, you said that your manufacturing plant is here. I'm kind of curious. Austin is known for more tech and things like that. How have you found kind of the local talent market for the types of people that you need in your manufacturing plant?
Yeah, well, I've got the best team anybody could hope to have. I mean, I would say the depth of experience and the depth of willingness to work and understand problems. Frankly, there's not a lot of people out there who understand steam traps. Right? It's a very obscure industry. Yeah. So what I look for is, who are the people out there who can figure things out? Who are the people that when they can look at a problem and say, man, I know nothing about this. I'm going to dig in. I'm going to find out everything I need to. I'm going to come up with a solution to this problem, whether it be in marketing or finance or operations. Austin's been a great place for that. And but we've also hired people from outside the Austin area as well. And so overall, I'd say that Austin's just been a great place to start a business.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think I always like to wind things down with like a look to the future. You obviously are. It seems like things are going quite well. You've already kind of started shipping product. You've already sold out of your second production run. And so I guess, if we jumped on a podcast 12 months from now, what would you like to have accomplished from a business perspective, to kind of have that be a very positive and upbeat conversation versus, we missed the mark, as far as that goes. So what are you kind of looking forward to?
Yeah, what I would like to do is really get past the whole idea that we're a steam trap company. I mean, we are. It's what we make, but you incorporate SteamView and there's other products that we have under development that are going to be providing overall information. So if you look at the importance of heat, which is what steam is, it provides heat to all these manufacturing processes. Keeping that working is an important thing for all these industries. And so what I would want people to look at is sit there and say, Imperium Technologies has stepped into an industry that has really been overlooked by the tech industry at large, and they have solved a lot of these problems. They are now providing a more reliable heat distribution system. They're providing information to people they never had before. And as a result, their production uptime has gone up. Their costs have gone down. The people that they've hired, they're doing more important things. They're doing things that are actually improving the product, not going out trying to find which of these hundreds of traps is causing the problem in the system. That's what I'd like to see. I'd really like people to just say, because of Imperium Technologies, we have improved our overall product efficiency.
Makes sense. Well, hopefully we can get the message out there and scream it from the rooftops, essentially. So no, I appreciate that. Awesome. I guess last kind of thing before we jump into the final 3-pack, I guess, any kind of recommendations, you kind of shared a little bit about this earlier, but, if somebody is listening to this, what kind of recommendation or advice would you give somebody that, is interested in starting a product that is disrupting or going into a market like yours that really had no innovation in 20, 30, 40 years, because somebody might look at that and say that's a target-rich environment, or some people may say, well, that's going to be way too hard because the status quo is the status quo and that's what people like, and change is hard. So, what advice would you give somebody that's kind of trying to get into a similar style market that what you're into?
Yeah. Well, if you're concerned about being hard, I would suggest you don't do it because I promise you it will be hard. But I would say that in speaking to investors, I spent way too much time trying to explain the problem. I think investors really they kind of trust that, okay, whatever you're talking about, you get it. So at that first conversation, get into the financial benefits, get into what does a deal look like. I think my first word, boy, I got to keep this thing under 10 minutes. I just about fell over. How am I going to do that? Now my pitch, it's probably about 7 minutes. And I think, getting people quickly up to speed on the overall company direction on that. So if you're looking at doing something very technical, keep it focused on the financial business model.
Yeah, financial investors really want to know what am I going to get out of this, right?
Yeah.
What's going to be the return versus, obviously they care about the problem typically, right? But they care about money a lot of times. So no, it makes a lot of sense. Brad, this has been awesome. I want to end the show like I do with every guest and ask a 3-pack of questions. So first question here, what's like an influential book or podcast that you might recommend to our audience?
Yeah, I would say probably the one that really spurred me on was Peter Thiel's 0 to 1.
Okay.
Because he was talking about startups and how to do it, and I kept in every chapter I read, I thought, oh boy, this is going to be the chapter where the anvil drops and blows a hole in our business case and all that stuff. But as I kept reading, it's like, boy, this is us. This is us. So it was very encouraging by somebody who's been in this business in the startup business for a long time, knows how to do it. So it was very encouraging to see his information.
Awesome. No, I've read that book. It's been a while, so I may have to go back and check that one out. All right. Second question here. What is your favorite thing to do outside of the office?
Yeah, I really enjoy doing woodworking. I like just building things with my hands and stuff like that. It's much different than working in the tech sector because you actually see it and it comes out and you can come up with something that's actually quite beautiful. There's nothing really beautiful about a steam trap, to be honest, but you do some good woodworking and it turns out to be a very relaxing thing to do. Yeah.
Any specific outcomes that you look at, or are you doing like birds or like, any kind of specific kind of woodworking kind of output?
Yeah, it's typically tables, beds, that type of stuff.
Got it. Yeah, I have a neighbor who he like takes a big stump of wood and like with a chainsaw cuts out like dogs or like eagles. It's quite impressive. So fair enough. All right, last question here. Favorite vacation spot?
Boy, any place warm and tropical. So this could be Hawaii, down the Bahamas. Any place like that where you can just sit on the beach and relax. And frankly, any place with my family is probably my favorite vacation spot.
Fair enough. Awesome. Brad, this has been awesome to learn about Imperium Technologies and about your journey kind of over the last couple of years, I guess. If people are listening to this and they want to learn more about what you're doing, learn more about your story, what is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, go to our webpage, imperiumzone.com, imperiumzone, all one word, .com, and it's got an information thing. I'll tell you, we are upgrading our webpage as we speak. We were trying to keep a lot of this secret, but now that we're out in the market, we're trying to push it out there. Our webpage is running a little bit behind where I'd like it to be, but if you click on that, there's an information button, and you'll get in touch with somebody here at the company.
Awesome. Brad, like I said, thank you very much. It's been awesome to learn about your journey. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, well, thank you, Justin. I've enjoyed our time together and look forward to talking to you soon.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.